Hey everybody, and welcome to Epic Everyday, our weekday podcast for busy, overwhelmed Christians who don't want to live in the crazy and instead want to live in freedom and abundance and peace. I'm Liz Frerichs, and this is my husband, Evan.
Hello.
And we're so glad you guys are here with us on this lovely Thursday.
Yes. Happy Thursday. Happy 2008. Still getting settled into it.
2018.
Boy.
We're only a decade behind, babe.
Got most of the numbers right.
Today we are going to keep talking about New Year's and talk about being connected. One of the things I was thinking about is, we've been talking about making goals and setting up our railroad tracks so that we have that to fall back on regardless of how the year goes. And that will always make our year better.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes we forget to address this area, the area of connection.
Right. I think we can, when we're setting goals, start to see it all as it's me making or breaking this plan, and it's only up to me, right?
Yeah.
These are my goals. If I don't perform, then I think one of the places I get into that is not a good place is the area of kind of self-criticism and self-shame. Like, oh, you messed up. You didn't do that right. And that's not a place I want to be. I don't think that's a productive place to be. And I don't think that's always true, especially, a mistake is a mistake, but it's just a mistake. We've talked about that before. We got to be allowed to make mistakes.
Yeah,
it's one
because
of the best
mistakes,
ways to learn.
Right. They're not an end in themselves. They're just a road stop, a pit stop. You stop there, go, I need to change where I'm headed. Okay, let's do that.
But I think maybe what you were getting at was, we're going to talk about that, but also that it's not just us versus the world. Some things take a team. A lot of things take more than one person to accomplish.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's that. I think we also just don't make goals about like, hey, I'm going to grow my marriage or grow my relationship with my kids or grow my relationship with my coworkers or even our relationship with God. I think because it's so hard to measure that we don't really make goals in this area. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But I
think they're very intangible.
It's true. But I think we also know when those things are getting better and growing and stuff.
Right. But to say like, okay, I'm going to, for instance, if I was like, okay, I'm totally going to work on our marriage this year.
Yeah, you're going to work on it.
I'm going to work on this. Yep. Mm-hmm. I'm going to make our marriage so much better.
That's right.
If I was going to work on our marriage, there are some things that I could be like, okay, well, so we should probably spend more time together.
But see, then you start talking about we.
Right. So then I'd have to go to you and be like, hey, for one of our goals this year, can we, together try to have a regular date night or come up with something like that? So I would have to obviously include you.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like there aren't necessarily good markers,
Yeah, it's true. Right. You can be like, okay, we did 52 date nights this year. That doesn't automatically mean your relationship's better or not.
Right. Exactly. Because I did that last year. One of my goals was to try to...
You went on 52 dates last year?
Yeah, you missed them.
Dang. Better make those goals this year.
One of my goals was to try to be more intentional about spending time with people from church because I still don't attend church with my health problems. So it's hard to work on those relationships. So I was like, all right, I'm going to hang out with people outside of church. I'm going to get coffee with a few people this year. And I did, but I don't feel like it made any difference.
Yeah.
It's
a good goal, but
right.
You can't control the outcome.
Right. Yeah. It didn't really help. Those relationships just continued to atrophy. And part of that is just recognizing that you can only reach halfway.
Yeah.
So no matter how hard you try to fix a relationship, you can only fix your side. You can't fix the other person's side.
Maybe that's another reason it's so easy to not set goals in this area, because we kind of, if we think about it enough, like you just said, we realize we can only do so much.
Right.
And so we might put work in and we might not see the kind of fruit we were expecting.
Yeah.
But I think it's still a good idea to set goals in this area too.
Right. I think it's important to have, to be intentional about these are the relationships I'm pursuing. Here's why I picked these people to pursue, whether that's, this is my kids and I believe that God has put them in my life for a reason and I can't neglect them. So I'm going to be intentional about spending time with them, or your spouse, or the people you work with. We've talked before about how sometimes being intentional with connection just means sticking around for 20 minutes after church,
Yeah.
or talking to the person that's in the break room with you at work. It doesn't have to be a big, I'm adding something new to my schedule. It doesn't necessarily have to be anything like that.
Yeah. I think another pitfall of this, like I said before, sometimes I get into the blaming and self-blaming myself and self-shame about, not achieving a goal or something.
Yeah.
And I think we want to stay out of that game, but we especially want to stay out of it if we're going to blame somebody else for things not working right. And that kind of goes hand in hand with okay, I'm going to put this olive branch out there, or I'm going to be intentional about my relationships. If it doesn't work out, I don't know. I don't think we still want to start blaming people. We just want to keep showing up. And that's going to be hard.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's a heads up, but it's also I don't know, like with any goal. I mean, I think one of the reasons I have never really been so into resolutions and goals is because if you don't set a goal, then it's harder to say that you failed, So if you're setting goals.
Interesting.
And then you're kind of grading yourself and, all the stuff we advocate of, examine life and investigating what's going on with self. And
so every year you can give yourself a high five and be like, dude, I didn't fail any of my resolutions.
Right. No failing. Yeah. So it kind of puts yourself out there to be like, I'm going to try to be a better friend and make some friends, or whatever your connection goals are.
Right.
That's a noble pursuit, but I don't know. Anytime you involve somebody else, it's tricky.
This is true. And that's why, connection, we've talked before, how we start with our relationship with God, and then out of that flows our relationships with other people. Because if we have that secure sense of our belovedness, just that grounding in, okay, who am I? I'm important to God. Doesn't matter what anybody else says. Doesn't matter if I call this person 16 times and they never answer the phone or whatever. That has nothing to do with my self-worth.
Yeah.
Or even with, whether they like me as a person or not. They might just be stressed. But kind of unhooking all of our needs from our relationships with other people and putting all that stuff on our relationship with God, so that then we can love, because we're not loving, kind of that false love where you're like, oh, I really care about you because I need you to do, I need you to tell me how awesome I am.
Right. And
I need you to also, bolster my spirits when I'm stressed. And I need you.
Yeah, so it's all for me.
Right. Yeah, there's that, I'm loving you, but it's because so that you'll owe me and I can call those things in.
Yeah, I think that's a good challenge. Start with having goals that invest in our relationship with God.
Doing a Sabbath, spending daily time with Jesus, having a daily office, going to bed on time.
Yeah, I was just saying, we don't need to make a whole list here, but I think that it's a good challenge to make that a priority this year.
Right.
But yeah, start with our relationship with God.
Right. And that gives us that safe place to then invest in our relationships with other people.
One of the things that might help with the relationships with other people goals is to maybe split them up into categories. Maybe, if you're struggling with an addiction or something, there's a certain group of people, and there are networks already in place to go and do battle with your fellows with those things, whether it's a church support group or a 12-step group or a group therapy session of some kind. And those can be, there's already going to be people there ready to intentionally get that task done,
Right.
and your relationships are going to grow, your people skills. It should anyway.
Yeah.
I found that relationship work is the best way to fight addictions.
Yeah. And a lot of those groups are free.
Yeah.
Which, if that's a concern for you this year, that's a good way to start.
Yeah. And then the other category I thought of, and there's probably hundreds of them, would be, like business relationships. There's people, like if you have your own business, there's networks of other business owners who kind of support each other and stuff. Sometimes they're called a mastermind group or a local business support group or something.
Yeah.
There's going to be people there. I think this can be less on like, oh, let's make sure our personal relationship is good, and more on a like functional stuff with your business, but it's still, your relationship can grow, and there's kind of the sense of unity and like, all right, now it's our team versus the world. It's not just me and my business versus the world. Mm-hmm. I think that's going to be one of my goals this year. I'm going to try to find some people to talk shop with a little bit more.
Yeah, so if any of you guys that are listening are interested in starting a mastermind group, hit us up.
Yeah, would be interested in what you have to say, for sure.
Another reason I think that we don't make connection goals is that we get too used to the status quo.
Oh.
Like, we don't even recognize that we need to make those goals. Maybe you're just so used to being in a marriage where you don't really talk to your spouse, where you're basically roommates.
Or it might, yeah. And maybe if you want it to be different, it might just seem so impossible.
And overwhelming.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah. But we have to start with actually recognizing, okay, there is a problem. It is really, really hard to take that first step where you're like, oh, crap, I had to deal with this.
Yeah. And I think you want to do, whether it's that where like maybe your spouse isn't as interested as you are in building the relationship or whatever. I think you could find a relationship where there's going to be some traction in that area that's so important.
Right.
And use that momentum to try to grow some other areas. But
Yeah.
I don't know. That's a tough one.
Well, one of the things I wrote down is to start praying about it, because God is the only one that can change people's hearts. So if you are used to the status quo and you can't see what, the not status quo might be like, because it is possible to have a relationship with your spouse, with your kids, with the people around you that's actually, you are being your authentic self, they are being their authentic self, and everybody's a propeller. If you're in a relationship with somebody who's a drainer, you can work on trying to change that relationship. And you can only do your half. You can't do their half, like we talked about before, but it is possible to change the tenor of your relationships. And that was something that I never thought that I could do, back in the day when my trauma was so bad. Like, I didn't have any healthy relationships. And I thought that having healthy relationships was A, impossible, and B, I didn't know even how to go about changing it. But as you grow in your relationship with God and have that safety, you can start actually putting down healthy boundaries and changing the culture of your relationships.
Yeah, I think you can look at that like, oh, I've only got influence over half of this relationship. That's a cup half empty, half full situation there. In a way, you can't change everything about it. So you're like, oh, I can't, why even bother?
But you can change a lot.
Half is a lot.
Yeah,
and,
it is.
Yeah, and so especially some of these close relationships. One person can change the entire house.
Yeah, and that's what God's called us to do. We're supposed to be salt and light in all of our relationships.
Yeah, and being secure in your identity and your center and your just yourself with God can give us other people freedom to try to do exactly that too, and that grows relationships.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, because if you're so secure in who you are, you're not going to be like, oh, you need to change. You need to be more like me or something. That's not going to happen.
Right. Yeah, you can give people space. So, anyway, hopefully that encourages you guys to set connection goals this year. And if you don't know where to start by praying and asking God to show you where to start. He can change people's hearts. He can show you what's true. He's definitely the place to start.
Yeah.
We love you guys, and we're praying for you. Thanks to everybody that's been sharing the show. We really appreciate it. If you have found this show helpful, please do continue to share it. And if you haven't taken the quiz yet, take it.
Yeah.
So that then you can see where you need to grow in your CSCs. All right, come back tomorrow, and we're going to talk about being complete.
All right. See you then.
Bye.